Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, based on where you are. Thank you so much for joining us today. A very warm welcome to all of you for joining us from across the region and possibly beyond. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here today. I'm Mansa, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to this power packed session titled From Lag to Lead: How CDC is Powering Real Time Fraud Detection, Compliance, and Customer Intelligence. BFSI institutions, banks, insurers, and financial service providers are under immense pressure to prevent fraudulent transactions, deliver a hyper personalized customer experience, act on insights as soon as possible, and consider regulatory compliance. With ever changing guidelines, delays in data updates can lead to missed alerts, penalties, or even worse, reputation loss. So, the message is clear: the data has to be fresh and fast, but that's the challenge. Most data in large organizations still travels through traditional batch-based pipelines, meaning insights come in hours, days, or sometimes even weeks later. In an industry where every millisecond matters, that no longer is good enough. So that's where CDC or change data capture comes in. Today we are going to explore how CDC is transforming data architecture from being reactive to becoming truly real time. Today's webinar is all about leading banks and insurers, how they are actually making this happen using tools like Qlik, Microsoft Fabric, and Databricks. Our goal is to give you not just a tech deep dive, but also a strategic roadmap to modern data operations. So, joining us today, we have a stellar lineup of speakers with us. Firstly, Prathamesh Sable. Prathamesh leads the Microsoft Fabric Center of Excellence at Exponentia, bringing over 16 years of global experience in data strategy and business transformation. A certified expert across Microsoft, SAFe, and TOGAF frameworks, he empowers enterprises to unlock insights, streamline migration, and drive innovation with Fabric as the foundation for scalable and data driven growth. Welcome, Prathamesh.
Thank you, Mansa. Thank you for joining in.
Thank you, Prathamesh. Also joining us, we have Rahul Magotra. Rahul is a solutions architect at Exponentia with 12 plus years in data and engineering and pre-sales experience. He brings deep expertise in Qlik, Replicate, and Talent, having led multiple real-time data ingestion and governance initiatives. He is passionate about helping enterprises unlock value from data in motion and modernize their data estates across BFSI and other sectors. Welcome today, Rahul.
Yeah, thanks, Mansa. Hi, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining from. Thank you for joining today's session. I'm thrilled to be on this panel with such brilliant minds. I'm looking forward to this engaging conversation today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rahul. Next, we also have Viraj Manjarekar joining us. Viraj leads the Databricks Center of Excellence at Exponentia, overseeing over 75 Databricks practitioners. With 7 plus years of experience of heading customer success at prominent data and AI firms, he has led accelerator development for modernizing data platforms and optimizing the Lakehouse implementation for legacy BFSI and NBFC customers. Welcome today, Viraj.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Mansa, and I extend the warm welcome to our entire audience.
Thank you so much for that. Last but not the least, we also have Imran Baig. Imran is a senior technical architect at Exponentia with over 15 years of experience in building scalable data platforms across cloud and hybrid environments. With deep expertise in Azure, Databricks, and Snowflake, he is passionate about solving enterprise data challenges and helping organizations unlock value through governed and high performance architectures. A warm welcome to you, Imran.
Thank you, Mansa. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone.
Yeah. So with that, we have a panel, and once again, welcome to our dear panel and also to the audience. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Before we start off with the session, a quick note to the audience: we'll reserve a few minutes at the end of the session for the Q&A. So feel free to drop in your questions in the chat as we go, and you don't need to wait for the end of the session for that. So as it pops in your head, please drop them. So to kick off today's session, let's start with a very basic foundational question. What exactly is CDC? What is change data capture and how does it work in I'd also love to hear from each of you on which tool or technology you're leveraging or recommending for CDC in your respective solutions. Um, Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mansa. So I think, like we have discussed, CDC is our today's topic. We will be talking about change data capture. So this, I'll quickly explain what change data capture is. Getting your saves, whatever source systems usually organizations have, where they have their transactional data, their business going on. That data keeps on coming into their transactional systems, and that flows usually into analytical platforms where we build analytics on top of it. So this transition of data from your source systems to the platform where you want to build analytics, this in the older days used to take time because during the day your business is running, you don't want to hinder the performance of your source systems. So you basically used to run these batches in the night when you get the time, and you used to get that this data in T-1, or let's say with delays, sometimes days, sometimes weeks. So there was a need to bring this gap down, bring the stat down, so that these real time use cases can be leveraged. Some be it fraud detection, be it around your customer 360. So to basically to bring this gap down, there was a need for to get this data in real time as soon as these changes are applied on your source. So that was the basic concept on why we had this need for CDC and why this came into picture. So basically, it captures all your inserts, updates, deletes on your source systems as soon as they happen in your source systems in real time. They propagate those to your target systems. From a tool point of view, the tool that I personally work a lot with is Qlik Replicate. It is one of the tools from the Qlik suite. Right now, Qlik Replicate is the on-premise offering, but there is also a cloud offering, Qlik Talent Cloud, where CDC can be performed. So that is the tool I'll be focusing on talking about today, the features and how we leverage CDC in the Qlik platform. So that is what I'll be focusing on today. I'd love to hear what Imran has to say about this.
Thanks, Rahul. Nice introduction for that CDC. CDC chain data capture is a method to identify and capture the only changes, right? So whatever the insert, upset, deletes are made over the source over the time, right? So instead of reloading everything, all of our data set into database, that will consume a lot of time and it takes compute as well. So if you have a CDC of a data and incremental changes only to process, so how good is that? Right. So how it works is that CDC works by capturing only the change that is being captured in the database logs or change that is being tracked in the tables, right? So once you get those changes, right, you transfer that to the downstreams for consumption and for analytic platforms. With the Databricks, typically, so you have a autoloader where you ingest this CDC data and followed with DLTs, where DLT is a function of apply changes and CD1 type 1 and type 2, right? So type CDC, CDC type 1, type 2 will help you to track down the history changes, right? So if you don't have that CDC in future and then you are loading, you are updating on the current tables, so you will lose your history data as well, right? So that important it is to have CDC and only to get CDC data to be to transform. It becomes a very small chunk of data, and that becomes very helpful in the real time as well. So tools like Qlik will extract the data, extract changes from the databases, SQL Server, Oracle, SAP for the legacy systems, and give me the CDC data, make it ready for Databricks to consume it, right? So the combination of all this scalable, combination of all these resources will make scalable, reliable, real-time CDC pipelines, which is very, especially very valuable in high-frequency data environment like BFSI. Over to you, Mansa.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insights, Imran. But I'd also love to hear from Prathamesh if you'd like to shed some light on the same topic.
Sure. Thanks, Mansa. So you guys have mentioned about CDC, so one of the most important things on CDC is, traditionally every organization used to run a batch ETL job, pulling all the tables and overwriting the data that has changed. Ideally, this is acceptable only where there is small data and the data size is pretty small. So, and the organization is really not concerned about, overnight refreshes. But when it comes on to, real-time transactions like banking, regulatory compliance, these things will not work. So this is the point where CDC really becomes very important, where customer wants to expect instant updates. Fraud teams can spot transactions. So CDC can solves all this by capturing only the deltas. The deltas, when we say, it is much more like the insert, update, deletes, and we move efficiently from to the data platform. So this reduces the movement cost, keep the systems in sync, powers real-time dashboards, and support streaming in use cases, improving agility and disruptions across these multiple systems. So in short, if I put it that way, it's a bridge that transforms the traditional batch world into a real-time, always on time, always on insight-driven data estate. So that's one of the things that we are trying to look at. And when it comes down to data estate, that's the modern data platforms like Databricks and Fabric play a very important role. And when it comes down to Microsoft Fabric, there are native capabilities in CDC that handle CDC like copy jobs, where we can automatically select tables and do incremental loads. We have Azure Data Factory on pipelines, where we can bring in data from data sources in real time, and we can set up incremental processes as well, which will only bring the incremental data. From the Fabric perspective as well, yes, we there is native CDC capabilities that are available, and yeah,
Great. I think combined everybody's opinions or point of views, I think we have a good understanding of what CDC is and how it works. Moving on, why CDC is critical for BFSI organizations today? I'd really love to hear your thoughts on this, Viraj.
Sure, Martin. So, as we know that in the BFSI sector, the data volumes are massive, the transaction rates are really high, and there is a tremendous scrutiny on the regulation and data governance. So that is where CDC could serve as a strategic enabler, as the folks mentioned, for real-time intelligence, for operational efficiency, and to make the data governance compliant. So what CDC would do is that the financial institutions would be able to continuously capture and propagate changes, be it like inserts, updates, or deletes, from their transactional systems, such as banking ledgers or trading platforms or credit engines, and policy administration systems directly into their data and AI ecosystems without having to do a full data refresh. Another way which I think that this would benefit them, or why they should do it, is because they can then enable a real-time risk and fraud mitigation use case, or they could look at implementing a regulatory compliance and auditability use case, or simply then you can look at operational scalability, because CDC will minimize the data movement and compute cost, because it's processing the data like only the delta, only the change. And this will ensure that as the volumes grow, the pipeline remain cost efficient and yet performant. So scaling of the scalable modernization of legacy data estates will also be enabled. That, in my opinion, is why CDC would be critical for the BFSI segment. I
Yeah.
think we can have more inputs on this from Prathamesh as well.
Yeah.
important point, on regulatory compliance, where it's about risk and liquidity dashboard for SOX compliance. Regulators need audit data. So CDC definitely helps us with that. I would like to also add, a couple of few more thoughts on that. Wherein when you're talking about fraud detection, if there's a suspicious transaction, the bank cannot wait for overnight batch for the jobs to bring in new data, and you need real time. So CDC basically makes that possible as well, and only new transactions are streamed. And there is another element of where we are looking at KYC, where customer wants to have his documents updated. So if you want to sync the KYC updates or account changes, the CDC help keep all these touch point in sync, ensuring the customer support, digital channels, and marketing, they have all version of truth. So basically, CDC in BFSI, from my perspective, I will be talking more in terms of operation. It is where better risk control, faster fraud response, I would say, regulatory confidence, and real-time customer engagement. This can be helped with CDC efficiently without hammering the system with full data reloads. I'd like to pass it on to Rahul on his thoughts around CDC on BFSI.
Yeah, right. I think most of the things are already covered, be it from a fraud detection point of view, be it from a customer 360 point of view, or from a regulatory point of view, for which I think organizations are or will be under immense pressure. Let's say this DPDP Act, once there are fines regulated, whether it once everything is in place, all these things will become a huge problem for them if they are not in place. These kind of things. Also, I think some of the use cases where, let's say, some customers want some real-time credit scoring for their customers to be checked in real time. That could be one of the use cases. So there are many, real-time use cases in BFSI, which, most of them are either on the, enhancing your customer experience side, but there are a lot on the regulatory and the compliance side also that, cannot be neglected. So that as a whole, I think, BFSI is I think it is fronting the domain and, the need for this real-time data. Right, Imran?
Uh, well said, Rahul. To add to the what all has added is that BFSI is more driven with trust and regulation and fast changing customer view, right? So with that kind of change, we want to give the users client reliable data in real time, so that they can be useful in their use cases. So I'd like to go through some useful use cases where like for example of fraud detection. So for example, where a millisecond delay can cause a major financial losses, like reporting regulatory reporting, it is not automated.
I think we have
Right.
seen.
I think the point is, that the BFSI firms are a little under more pressure than the other domains because of these regulatory, these other compliant needs. So that is where, this real-time need also is more magnified, is more needed, so that these organizations can not just cater to their customers, but also, help themselves be more prepared for future regulatory compliances. So I think that risk has to be decreased, and that risk is even more in this BFSI sector.
Yeah, I think that wraps it up. If there's anything more that you'd like to add to that, Imran, since you dropped off.
Yeah, I was just talking about use cases, right? And how the reporting and regulatory reporting at right time is more important. So if you have a small chunk of data to be processed at a real time, and you get real timely reports, so decision making becomes very easy, and this can be eliminated. That is how it is. And moreover, CDC helps you to optimize your data infrastructure cost as well, avoiding reloads and being efficient in this cloud era. So for BFSI, I say it CDC is no longer optional. So we have to it's kind of a mandatory thing. That's all I think to add to.
Yeah, I think that
Over to you,
wraps
Mansa.
up. Yeah, thanks, Imran. Thank you everybody for those insights. I think even for me, who doesn't really get the technicalities of such things, it really helps me understand why is it so crucial, especially for BFSI. I'd also love to hear how do platforms like Qlik, Databricks, or Fabric enable real-time CDC pipelines, and what are the tools that support this ecosystem? Would really love to hear all of your thoughts on it, but I'll hand it over to Rahul right away.
Right. So from a tool perspective, like I mentioned, I work with Qlik a lot. So as most of you might know, Qlik has also acquired Talent a couple of years ago. So the entire Qlik Talent suite is something that can cater to all of these CDC needs. The tool is capable of ingesting from different type of source systems, be it database systems, be it ERPs, flat files, APIs, all kind of different source system, heterogeneous systems that usually organizations have these different silos in. So it has a wide range, of connectors for all these source systems on the target side as well. So there is the Qlik Talent Cloud platform. There, since we're talking about BFSI, sometimes there is a need for an on-premise platform as well in some cases, be it related to infosec or security concerns. So there is another tool that we work with, which is Qlik Replicate, which is the on-premise version of this cloud one, which again is has its own USPs. It is agentless. It is 100% resilient. Not just your DMLs, your DDLs are also propagated. Your schema evolution is taken care of. So it is a very mature, very fast, no code, low code, easy to use GUI tool, where you can, simply create your pipelines within minutes and start running them, since all of these connectors are already available out of the box. I think that is, how we do it in Qlik for most of these CDC uh, implementations. Um, Maybe, yeah, Imran, you can throw some light on how you do it in Databricks.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul. On that, I'll speak more about how the Databricks works in CDC. Right, so CDC is extremely we understood that CDC is extremely critical for the real-time data environments. Right, so to have a data, I mean, to have that robust and scalable ecosystem to support that, Databricks offer a couple of functionality in it. Where, for one example, is autoloader, where it takes only the newly ingested updated files or CDC files incrementally, and then that autoloader pass on to the DLTs, right? So there's after that autoloader they can pass on to the DLTs. The DLTs have functions like apply changes and apply snapshots, where to the main table they will identify what are the SCD1s and SCD2s in the tables, and they update that tables accordingly. And then to additionally, there is also called a data lake change data feed, where it allows only the processed rows, only the change records from the table to allow to the downstreams, which will be great for the performance and cost. And we often integrate tools like Kafka streams, Kafka to stream changes, through transaction database in near real time. But after that, we need a structure stream database supports that in processing these events. Structurally, this is particularly useful in BSI scenarios where the data changes, such as customer updates, transaction or KYC modification, right? So to reflect that, and to process across all through down system, this is very helpful when we have a small chunk of a data to be processed. Yeah, that's all from me, and I think Prathamesh can add more to that.
Yes, thank you, Imran. So Fabric and Databricks, they're close. I would say they're very close to each other in terms of, the way they function in CDC. And also, the only difference what I've mentioned, because since both of these platforms sit on, a Spark, so, Delta Lake, Lake Houses is much more of the important concepts here. So it becomes very practical to have, CDC based on the combining several components into one single platform. And you have the Delta Lake, which manages the core transaction logs that makes the CDC possible. So engineers on top of that can run the Spark notebooks to query the table changes, that has only brought in, which is new into the last pipe, which is new after the last pipeline run. And then you can, when I'm talking about Fabric, you can leverage Fabric pipelines to orchestrate this data flow. A typical pipeline might run every few minutes, pick up new changes and apply the business rules and transformations on top of the new data, and then push it to the silver or gold layers. And from there, business users can stay up to date. One of the important element when it comes down to reporting in Microsoft Fabric, you have a concept of direct link. So whenever you have a change data capture, you don't have to overlay, you don't have to refresh your dashboard. So the real power of CDC is always possible when you combine that with a direct lake. So as long as this delta lands in the lake house and lake houses or the warehouses, dashboards will automatically reflect this update. So this is huge for the fraud teams, operational managers, or compliance teams in terms of when they're looking at real time reporting as well. And there are a lot of other tools like Data Factory, which helps you to fill the gaps for SAP DB2 specifically. When we talked about it earlier, there are products like Fivetran as well, which kind of help you bring in data as well. But we also have Qlik, which Rahul, you're already speaking about it. That's a fantastic tool in terms of working on CDC as well. On top of that, one of the important things that we also miss is on the data governance. When the CDC happens, we also need to have some sort of data governance. So from Fabric perspective, you have Microsoft Purview sitting on top of everything, giving you a lineage of full governance, so that where every change in from where every change came in from and where it is go. And that is the must for BFSIs from my process.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Prathamesh, and also Rahul and Imran for that. I think Imran seems to be facing some technical issues. Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question. So this is about how do modern CDC platforms handle schema changes, late arrival events, and also integration across complex sources like SAP, DB2, and mainframes. Would love to hear your thoughts since Imran is back. Imran, would love to hear your thoughts on how modern CDC platform handles schema changes, late
Yeah,
arrival events.
modern CDC. Modern CDC platform designed to handle handle real-time complexities. Like real-time complexities are like schema evolution is one of the things. Late arriving. Uh, um, I mean, these are the modern complexities. Right? For a schema change, we Databricks supports schema evolution, where using like autoloader, you can detect and adapt to the new columns that is coming from the CDC files. For example, you have a certain schema, and CDC files come with a new schema or added schema. So to help that to a system, we have a schema evolution where a new detected schema can be done, and accordingly it can be handled without any hazard, right? So DLTs are those we implemented in the last project. Same thing. For the late arriving is very important, where Databricks uses watermarking in structured streaming to process out of order data within the defined threshold, including ensuring the accuracy and time of sensitive workflows like fraud detection or compliance tracking is important, right? So tracking with complex systems like SAP DB2 or mainframes like Qlik handles through CDC, like Qlik or Informatica, because the legacy systems, where in a SAP DB2 mainframe you don't have their own CDC way of capturing the tools, right? So you have to have an external tool to support that. Once you get that CDC data, you have to bring to the cloud storage into a CDC, in friendly format where Databricks can consume. From there, autoloader it comes back and picks up that data where it is there, and then uses the apply changes, as discussed earlier, snapshots to get CD1s and CD2s. That makes highly flexible and scalable enterprise grade in real time in engineering pipelines, in data pipelines as well. Yeah. So Prathamesh, you can add more to that.
One of the key important things that we have identified when we work across project is, no project is, pretty still. Their fields change, column change, data comes in late. And, we also observed that legacy systems, they do not speak the modern languages, like, handling deletions, logs are not there. So one of the key important things, where Microsoft Fabric handles, or maybe Databricks will also handle that, because of their modern platforms, it's more on the, Delta like schema evolution. When the source adds, Delta transaction will pick it up. We can auto merge schemas. We can update the validation logic in pipeline and notebook to map these new fields to avoid, breaking the downstream processes. Other element is upon, late arriving events, where when we did speak about, where data is coming in late. So that is the point where the medallion architecture, the concept of medallion architecture is perfect here, because, the bronze layer will capture, raw CDC data exactly as it comes in, no matter what the order is. The silver layer, you can apply deduplication or merge logic using the merge commands there, so that the late data also lands in the right place without duplication. And along with that integration with like DB2 mainframes, we can do with CDC, with a lot of CDC connectors. Fabric has a native SAP CDC connector as well. But apart from that, products like Qlik Replicate can directly tap into the systems and get their transaction log, as they're better handling the encoding, batching, log parsing. And from there also the data can land into Fabric ClickHouse in the Delta compatible format. So basically the blend of Fabric plus the connectors, I feel it is very, very essential, or it is makes it possible to handle this real world mess, like evolving schemas, late records, tricky source systems, while keeping the pipelines stable and auditable. So I'll pass it on to Rahul to hear his thoughts on how Qlik Replicate can help us here.
Yeah, thanks, Prathamesh. I think that last point was really important, where replicate is more of a standalone tool which can sit in front of other tools, other platforms, other technology, and just sort of start that real-time process, have those pipelines in place. So since it is agentless, you can have it anywhere, on premise, on cloud, on some VM, anywhere it can be deployed. It can, you have your data lakes in Databricks as the target. You have Fabric, ADLS, different type of storage layers, be it on AWS, GCP, those kind of storage layers are available as targets as well. So think of it as more of a tool, that can help you facilitate your other pipelines as well, in case your real-time pipelines and your connectors are an issue with your existing platform. So I think that makes sure that the tool is pretty agnostic. There is no lock-in as such from a platform point of view. You can deploy it anywhere. You can ensure that your other platforms are working in harmony with these different tools. Specifically talking about this CDC replication with Replicate, from a schema changes point of view, I think one of the major problems that organizations used to have is having that overhead of your resources, your developers sit in and understand if there is any change on your DDLs on your source and maintain it throughout the life cycle after the maintenance of the project going live. And someone is just sitting and manually there's a process where they confirm that a new column or has been added from a DDL point of view on your source, and they change the entire pipeline to ensure that that is being replicated. So that this feature is now being automated. This is where these tools come in with different kind of features to handle different scenarios, not just a simple DDL propagation, but scenarios where your error handling is done with these kind of scenarios. Let's say your target table is missing, you try to load that table, how will you handle these? So these are all instruction based tick marks, radio buttons in Qlik Replicate, which you can easily take care of. From a integration point of view, like I said, most of the connectors that you can think of are already available, which is one of the reasons it can be easily fixed up with other tools and other platforms. And specifically talking about some major, if they're talking about BFSI sector, I've seen a lot of IBM DB2 mainframes, these kind of systems in there. So uh, irrespective of what kind of DB2 it is, let's say it is LUW, it is iSeries, these all of these out of the box connectors are available in Replicate to easily not just pick data from them, but handle special scenarios. For example, in DB cases, you might have RRN numbers that you want to propagate. So those kind of proprietary things are also available. And similarly for SAP, some of the proprietary code from SAP is also been integrated into the tool so that it can easily understand where to pick data from, either from the extraction layer, from the application layer. So it from an integration point of view, I think this is one of the tools that can help bring all your heterogeneous systems together uh, to one platform and provide that data in real time. I think one more important point that was discussed was around the governance. I think we'll keep that for another webinar. But the governance again is very important. You just don't need the data to come in fast. You want that data to be trusted. You want that data to be reliable. So I think that is something that we'll take up in another seminar for sure. But from a integration point of view, I think Replicate wins it in case if we're talking about the number of connectors or how it integrates with other systems. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Rahul. Thank you so much for your insights. With that question, I think we have covered a lot. We have covered what is CDC, what is critical, why is it critical for BFSI, and about tools, how it handles tools and platforms. So let's move on to the security considerations. So, what are some of the security considerations that come into picture when talking about the BFSI sector? Love to hear your thoughts on that, Prathamesh.
Yes, so that's a very valid question, and it's a very important question because security is absolutely critical when you're moving live data, sensitive data across your data platform, especially in the BFSI where you're dealing with customer information, transactional or regulated reports. At first, one of the key important things that needs to look at is the role-based access or the attribute access. Basically within Fabric, if I just talk about Fabric, we have Entra ID, or Azure AD that can govern who can access the pipelines, tables, lake houses, who can share the data with each other. So only authorized roles can read or write the CDC streams. Second is where you need fine-grained security such as row level security or column level security to wherein you can hide sensitive information or data
I think let me
There
speak.
seems to be some issue
I'll,
on
I'll take that. So I think security is something that is non-negotiable in BFSI. Security is something that we have seen not just when we are talking about real time, but in general where there is data in transit, where there is data at rest. Security is something that is non-negotiable when it comes to BFSI, because you will have your PII level information for your customers. You will have a lot of your credit card information, your transaction informations, your account informations. So all of this, there will be a need to properly encrypt, properly mask this data, have a proper role-based access and control to that, so that you're masking it at the field level, and this also integrates with your external systems. So beyond platform, platform level security, your compliance with your frameworks, let's say DPDP in case of Indian customers, GDPR in case of European customers, or RBI guidelines in general in case of Indian customers. So, having that audit trails, having that lineage tracking, that governance part is very important when it comes to security. So if you're talking about replication and it takes care of your encryption through in rest as well as in transit. There are different, I would say, encryption algorithms that you can use on your data while you're replicating it to either easily encrypt it. You could use MD5 or different kind of hash algorithms to encrypt it while it is replicating in real time. So I think, yeah, from a security point of view, that is something that has to be the foremost consideration when you are picking up these kind of work or these kind of organizations. So yeah, I would say that BFSI security is non-negotiable. Your views, Imran?
Thanks, Rahul.
Imran, I think you're on
This
mute.
is that. Rahul, yeah, is this can you hear me? Hello. Uh, is that I'm able to?
Yes, now you are.
Hello. Yeah. So sorry. So sorry for that, Rahul. I mean, you have touched. I was telling that you have touched most of the things. When you talk about BFSI, right, there are two critical security points. One is PII that rightly you mentioned. Another is financial information. Right? So we have to be very careful about these two data in terms of handling this data, whether it is both at transit or at rest. So we have, as you mentioned, there are multiple algorithms or KES methods to do this. Right? So when it, especially at transit, right, so you have access controls. So
Um, I
Yeah,
think
I think
there's
Prathamesh.
yes. Prathamesh, would you like to continue what you were saying? Please do.
Yes, so yeah. So it's more in terms of the row level security or fine grained security is speaking about also the rollback access control, or you can if you're talking about everything in transit, both at rest or in transit data needs to be encrypted as well, and governance by Microsoft Purview, and then Fabric integration different the cloud. And these are all the things that are very important when you talk from Microsoft perspective on the BFSI section, like from Fabric.
Thanks. Thanks, Prathamesh. Imran, you seem to have dropped out again. Would you like to continue what you were saying? We can move on to the next question.
I think so nothing to add to that. So, yeah, I mean, that's one of the critical aspects where we have to be aligned ourselves in putting our securities informations at tag. Whether it is role-based access, whether it is column masking, whether it is you data lineage, or you have all data governance in the Databricks, and with Databricks, it's what is I mean, you can control your data at rest, at transit as well. So that's all I can say right now.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Imran. I'll quickly move on to the next question as we're already running short of time. My next question would be: what are the common pitfalls and considerations during the implementation of CDC? Rahul, would you like to answer
Yeah,
that?
yeah. So I think in our experience, these CDC projects when we implement them on Qlik. So the general timeline that we look at is around 2 to 4 weeks, given that your prerequisites are in place. So some considerations when you're looking at your organization, looking at how I want my CDC pipelines to look. You'll have to see first how many heterogeneous source systems do I have that I want to ingest. Once you figure out, okay, these are my source systems that I want to ingest, this is the data that I want in real time to power up some use case. After that, your databases need to be set up for replication. Most of the times they are, but sometimes those databases are just set up to work as their ordinary business day to day. But these databases or these some of these platforms have to be enabled for replication. So there are some prerequisites that go on the source side, on the target side, which could be around user permissions, your port openings, network considerations, or those kind of things. Once you take care of those prerequisites, your source and target connections are in place. Pipelines and replicate hardly takes minutes and to start and to implement and start running those tasks. So that is, like I said, that's a low code, no code, very easy to use UI kind of a tool. So you'll just drag drop your connections. You'll give some instructions, like I mentioned, how to handle my DDLs, how to handle my DMLs in different scenarios. Mostly, or most of which would be, either radio buttons or some instructions you'll pick from the drag and from the drop down list. So yeah, pretty much you take care of how your source is set up, your target is set up. The actual development part on the Qlik replicate uh, tool is pretty easy. Just some simple tasks that you have to create within minutes. And then if you're talking about implementations, taking out considerations, since you'll have to do your historical roads to test it and then probably move on to your CDCs. So we generally implement these within 2 to 4 weeks. Don't take it doesn't take a lot of time, because these pipelines are, again, those once those instructions are given, it's more of a plug and play, and we forget about these pipelines and they keep on running. It doesn't need a lot of overhead or maintenance of that sort. I think that makes it a lot easier. Your views, Prathamesh?
A lot of things. I might not talk more about implementations, but I can talk about the common pitfalls and considerations when implementing CDC in Fabric. So every team, when we do CDC, we hit a few bumps. First thing is not having. We have observed that a lot of times primary key, there's no clear idea on what the primary key is. CDC needs a unique ID to track these changes. Without this, you risk duplicate records or missed updates. That's one of the things. Second thing is more in terms of ignoring the schema drift. Source systems change over time, and if you do not have right control to validate or evolve the schema, pipelines will break, or when a new field appears automatically. So that is where validation methods or meta-driven frameworks becomes very essential or helpful to adapt to these changes. Third thing is more in terms of the pipelines. They should safely process the change whenever it restarts, so that if the pipeline fails, if at any point you should be able to restart it, but it should not double the transactions and corrupt your target. So this is one of the things that you need to avoid. One of the other pitfall I would like to talk more in terms of is a log bloat, where you have delta transaction that will keep delta, it will log for every version, but if you don't manage the retention, then that is that becomes a problem. So there are like command like table optimization or vacuum in Fabric, that helps you to vacuum the data and kind of empowers that. And lot of times monitoring is overlooked. This is one of the key things. We build in alerts. We build in alerts for like any, if the pipelines finished, alerts are sent, but we do not throw like effective logging around that as well. So you can build in alerts, you can do logging, and you can build metrics around CDC jobs. So if something fails or lag behind, you want to know before the business users do. So if you plan for all these things upfront, CDC in Fabric, it will be more robust, predictable, and easy to manage. And these are common pitfalls. This way it can be across all the areas as well. So I'd like to hear thoughts, Imran.
Yeah, thanks, Prathamesh. I think you most things you have covered, and when it comes to pitfalls, right? Choosing right CDC methods is very important to get the CDC right. So I mean, if we don't do that, so one is, I mean, you're using, for example, you're using time-based CDC when source system is supporting a log-based CDC system. So to be more reliable, we have to be in a sync to do that part. So another point is, like you mentioned, that missing of primary keys are unique identifiers. If there is missing primary keys, if you don't have keys, right? So to get SCD1 and SCD2 becomes challenging. Same change in schema. So you covered that. So allowing the rate of data is another one. The another thing that I want to talk about is operational side. So if you're not tracking down the change versions or sequence numbers, right? So where CDC can provide, so they can lead to a duplicate records or missing data as well. So because sometimes in operation, when you're on your operation side, and you have to you have to run your pipelines multiple times or rerun your multiple times when it is failure, right? So if you are rerunning multiple times, you have to make sure that your merge statements, your insert statements, or your upsert statements, are to be done in the right way, in the right processing way. Because if you mess up with the sequence, right, then you may lose ending of the correct data, and the reliable data goes for a toss. So that's one of the key things here. The another is another perspective of not neglecting the data lineage and audit logs and PI information protection in terms of column masking, right? So these few things are very critical. Sometimes we don't take care of it, but yeah, it helps in regulating the monitoring regulating, and it helps a lot in BFI sector. I think to that I'll end this. I'll give back to Mansa for the next question.
Thanks, Imran. Thank you. So, in the interest of time, I'm gonna keep the last question very short and crisp. Just would like to hear all your thoughts, like in one line. How would you sum this up? The entire session.
Okay, I'll start. So I think just to sum up this session and the message that we want to put across is right, that CDC is no longer a luxury. It is more of a backbone of any modern data platform now. And with these tools that we discussed today, we are not just moving data faster. We are also trying to build that trust in data at every step. So I think that is the message that we want to put across. I think that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Rahul. Prathamesh, your
Yeah,
thoughts.
so just two things from my end, CDC, to CDC is not just a technical checkbox. It's particularly a mindset shift, So in the world where it's real time, you have to use CDC to make it more practical, scalable, and secure. And the last line I would like to add is, keep your data flowing and not frozen. And that with that, I would like to close the comments as well.
Moving on to
Thanks,
Imran.
Pradesh. I want to add 2 points to that point. Is that yes, CDC, we sort of talked a lot about it, how it is beneficial, and in terms of cost and everything. So I'll give an example. While I was working in the last project with BFSI, right? So their legacy system is to run around 8 hours to 6 to 8 hours, legacy batch processing. So when we did a CSC, this implementation reduction came to 40%. So that drastic changes will come to, and the amount of the cost and the amount of the infrastructure savings is tremendous, right? So overall, using data, using CDC in Databricks in real time is compliant, is cost effective, and exactly yes, it is very need in BFSI institutions today in terms of regulatory and competitive environment. So with that, I'll go back to you again.
Thanks, Imran. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for your fantastic insights. So, before we close the session, we'll quickly open the floor to some questions from the audience. I think we already do have a few. Um, yeah. So, the first question is by from Kinjal Bunta. Hello, everyone. My question is, how do you ensure data security while working with CDC? Open to the panel.
Yeah, I'll take that. So I think we have already discussed most of it. So there are different aspects to it. The first one is to make sure that your data is compliant from a security point of view when your data is in rest or it is in transit. So I think that is one of the important aspects. Other than that, these tools, they do have mechanisms to encrypt your data, to mechanisms for data, to mask your data. So for example, in Qlik replicate, you will have your different hash functions, be it SHA-256, or you can create your own user transformations to ensure that your data is secure. So it is already AES encrypted the data in that is moving. So that ensures your security while you're working with CDC in Qlik on the Qlik side. And obviously, like your role-based accesses and all those frameworks, they do come into picture and ensure your data security on a more granular level, which I think is pretty common across all other technologies as well. Right, Imran?
Yeah, I think you made a good point on
We
that.
covered everything.
Yeah, sorry, go on, Imran.
Okay.
No, sorry. I was just saying that we covered everything.
So it's the same for all tools that we have on Microsoft Fabric, be it Qlik, Replicate, and you did cover about row
Right.
level security, data in transit, and did we speak about it?
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
So in the interest of time, we have two more questions, but I'll just take one of them, and to the other, we'll answer to your question in the comment section after the webinar itself. So let's take one last question. This is from Zahir the Masker. What are the prerequisites to enable CDC on Delta tables in Fabric?
So there are it's pretty simple. You just have to write one piece of code, when you want to enable CDC on Delta tables in Microsoft Fabric, and that will turn on CDC for any kind of jobs that you have. So we can send across a link to you if you want to learn about that code. It's just enabling CDC, and that would be it on Fabric. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Prathamesh. Thank you for summing that up for us. So with that, we come to the end of today's Q&A and as well to the end of our session today. I'd really like to extend my thanks to all of you, to the panel, to the audience for making it so interactive. Thank you so much, Prathamesh, Rahul, also Viraj, who was not here, but Imran, all of you. Thank you for taking out your time and being with us here today. Um, so that brings us to the end of today's session. Once again, thank you for all. Thank you to all of us. If you still have any questions regarding the same topic, please feel free to reach out to us with the details that we have presented on the screen. Or if there's anything that you'd like to clear up about the webinar itself, please drop your questions in the comments. We will take this up even after the webinar. So with that, thank you. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone, for your
Mansa.
time. Cheers, sir. Bye.